started having chest pain pretty immediately after the booster and even went into the ER and they said, "Oh, you probably just pulled a muscle," and kind of sent him away. And
Oh
then
my word.
yeah, so he said to his wife, like, "My chest is bothering me again. I think I'm going to go sleep on the couch in my office
Oh
downstairs."
no.
And she found him like the next
Oh
morning.
my gosh.
And then I read his autopsy report. It's like literally like his heart just exploded. Like,
Oh my
and
word.
it was like died of natural causes. I'm like, oh my gosh, what?
Yeah, it's
No.
so natural to have your heart explode inside your chest.
Right. I
I don't
mean,
know.
really nobody's supposed to get bonuses from
Uh,
drug companies, but there's stuff going on in the background, like
well, they get
probably.
them from the insurance companies. I looked this up. I actually have a
Oh yeah.
paper. I don't know if you've seen this. It's from one of the insurance companies. Let me try to share
So
my screen.
there was years, this was probably like 8 or 9 years ago. Yeah.
Have you seen this already?
Hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, this is like it's in the incentive program, which is basically they give bonuses to hospitals and doctors if you give a certain amount of treatment the way they want you to. So it's like you get like gold stars, like when you bring your homework in at school and they give you a gold star, and then if you get like enough gold stars, you get a little pile of cash. It's
So
fun.
I think it was probably like nine years ago. I was working at a pediatric office. I have my own office now, but
Mhm.
the doctor and I were interviewing another doctor to like come in and work with us. And she told us she was working for Dallas Children's system at the time that her yearly bonus was based on how many kids she could get to take the flu shot.
Mhm.
Like that was her bonus. And you're like, well, why would you bonus that? They have to be getting money from somewhere to then hand over the money or else they wouldn't care.
Oh, it's not
Right?
just because they want people to be healthy.
No, they don't give a crap. No. It's always all about money. They don't care.
It's weird, yeah, because I saw some people arguing about that online, like, oh, the doctors and hospitals get bonuses for giving vaccines to babies and they to do these all these drug treatments and stuff. And the doctors would talk back like, no, we only get those from the insurance companies and it's to keep the people healthy. And so there's
But
like
where do you think the insurance money is getting the money from? I mean, it's like it's mind-boggling. I'm like, how intelligent are you supposed to be? Like, do you think the insurance like, oh, it's to keep disease down, and then it keeps the amount of money they have to spend on medical care down? I'm like, 1,000%, it does not. They're spending more money by dealing with the fallout of that, even though they're probably not ever going to put that together. But they're not just coming up with money. They
it,
have incentives, whether the pharmaceutical companies, it's like a
uh-huh.
trickle down incentive effect. And like they're too dumb to realize it. But what kills me about the crunchy folk or the people that whatever you want to call it that realize maybe Western medicine isn't the way, you'll see them online. I'm looking for a doctor or provider that looks at root cause and will actually fix what's wrong and doesn't believe in this and doesn't believe in that and also takes insurance. I'm like, like you can't, they don't pay
You
you to
can't
do
have
that. They
both.
pay they pay your provider to be in the room with you for 7 minutes.
You
Seven
you've
minutes.
you've seen doctors stay in the room for 7 minutes? That's a long time. I don't know if I've ever
Exactly.
seen
But I'm
that
saying
before.
like that's what the insurance company pays for is seven
Right. Like
minutes.
doctors, I
So,
think of a doctor just someone walking around the hospital in circles, just writing out drug prescriptions like candy and just handing it out and not really they're just looking at the nurse's chart. And like if I go in,
right.
I have emergency, I sit there for 3 or 4 hours. And then the nurse or the techs will kind of like write stuff down, ask me a couple questions every 30 or 40 minutes, and then doctor would just walk in, look at the chart. Oh, okay, write like 3 or 4 drug prescriptions, hand it to me, and then okay, go home and take all these drugs.
I had a mom call last week and her child has ADD, ADHD, and she said, like, I don't know where to start, but I don't want to medicate my kid.
Hmm.
I'm like, okay, well, I mean, in this office, like we look at the root cause. Like Is there nutritional deficiencies, food allergies or sensitivities, gut bugs, toxins? Like why, what, like you can call, like just like with autism, right? It's like a name for a group of symptoms. And
Hmm.
ADHD is like a diagnosis that names a group of symptoms. It's not
Hmm.
actually like what,
Right.
why,
It's
what's
not an
going on.
actual thing that's
It's
happening
not
that
an
you can
actual thing
treat.
that's wrong, you know? Like
Yeah.
there is no anyway, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, this is the way we work, blah, blah, blah. Yes, I have an infinite amount of success with the ADD, ADHD kids and with autism and severe sensory and all of that kind of stuff. And behavior, I never thought I would be really good at behavior kids, but I am.
But it's all connected. It's not
Right,
like they're thinking, "Oh, how can
right.
I drive my
And
parents
she says,
crazy?" It's something is
she's,
going
yeah.
on in their
She's
body.
like, well, we need a good place to start. I don't know any of this. So do you take insurance? And I said, no, the insurance company wants you to give your child Ritalin. They don't care what is actually wrong. They're not going to pay for that. And she's like, but we have insurance and a supplemental insurance. I'm like, right, they're not gonna pay for that. And she was like, well, I'm gonna have to find someone that takes insurance because she kept saying, but we also have a supplemental insurance. I said, well, when you're ready to get to the root cause, let me know. I've got to keep calling people. Have a nice day. She's like, what?
Gosh.
I'm like, no, let me know when you're ready. And I
I
just hung up,
I
moved
hate
on.
to laugh because these
My
people,
husband
because
was
they're really
laughing.
trying. They're really trying
He
their
was,
best, and they're
yeah,
like you grow up and we live in this society, and you're just hearing all these things like this is how things are done. That oh, you have insurance, you have to have this. But and I
but
understand like for
my husband was
emergencies, but
cackling.
it just
My
doesn't really
husband
work that way.
My husband was cackling because he's like, okay, not only do you pay for insurance, like you're paying for your insurance, like all this money
Hmm.
for a system that sucks. You're paying two of them, two, not just one, two to pay for a system that sucks. He was laughing. He's like, she was really proud, wasn't she? And
Right,
I
the
said, well,
supplemental,
it was.
right.
She was like, but I have two insurance companies. I'm like, and neither of them care
The only thing
what's
I care
actually
about
wrong with
is
your
if my leg's cut off, and and that I'm bleeding to death, are they going to sew me back up and not charge me $10
Right,
million
but do you
dollars
need
or
two
whatever?
insurance companies for catastrophic? No.
Just yeah.
But
No,
I
I
could tell she's like, wait. I'm like, like I already explained it to you. You're not gonna suck
it's
35 minutes of my time on the phone. Like, go
right.
go deal with all of that. And if you can remember what I said and you can keep with your mom's intuition, which is there, I can tell
Mhm.
that there's, but why I don't want to give my kid meth.
Have you ever heard of this cognitive bias thing where the theory goes that you have to hear something from 10 that places that you think of as reliable sources before you consider it truth.
Mhm.
And that's like I think about propaganda, like okay, the news that's a reliable source. No, it's not, but they think it is. And then my grandparents or whoever, and then my neighbor, and then if you hear something enough times, like 10 times from reliable sources, and I think it can be from the same source a few times also, but then they think, wait, that's true. But if they're not hearing the actual truth from enough places, but they're hearing all this other crap, like that vitamins are useless and
Right.
you should just trust your doctor as gospel, whatever they say, just do it. That's what people are hearing mostly, and it's like this.
Right. Well, that's like this mom when she said, we just need someone to kind of educate us and start us pointed in the right direction. I think that's probably like when you're bringing that point up, that's without using those words, that's where my brain went was you're not ready.
Hmm.
You're not ready. You're still, I can tell you need to go experience the other side before you decide you're ready to do the real work.
And hope that nobody in their family gets permanently damaged from
Right. I mean,
the
but
other way of doing things. I mean, I don't know if there's anybody that I can meet that says they don't know someone who has died or had their life completely turned upside down and destroyed, their family destroyed from opioids. Like the things. I don't know if they're still prescribing opioids like they used to, like
Oh yeah.
candy. I mean that
Mhm.
well, they already proved that it's like one of the worst atrocities to humankind, and they're still doing it. Like
Yeah, they don't care.
I'm afraid. I usually any painkillers I'm prescribed, if I have an emergency, I just throw them in the trash immediately. The doctor will give them to me, just and I'm like, I don't want them. I'll just take them anyways, and they probably get a kickback, you know. So I take them and I go home, throw them in the trash, and then I've taken like ibuprofen a few times if I'm in severe pain from an injury and I can't sleep, just to help me to go to sleep. But I won't take those prescription opioids or anything because I've had friends die because as soon as their prescription runs out, they go out on the street, they look for heroin or anything they can to make them feel normal again, or their life is destroyed because it's all they can think about, whether they have it or not.
Because of everything that's gone on with COVID, everybody, I mean, in all of that chaos, the good that has come of it is that people are very much questioning Western medicine and all of the mainstream stuff, which is good. But there's a lot of people that have taken it too far. And they're like, I don't need a provider at all.
Hmm.
I mean, a lot of times I think that probably works out fine. But then you have situations like this where you have a kid that's really delayed and skills, or another one that's really not really does have failure to thrive and isn't growing, and they're not going anywhere because they've all decided they don't need doctors. So
Right. I was gonna
there's
ask
the
you about
happy.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's such a growing mistrust of doctors because they have these experiences where they just, like with me, they just lose all trust. Like I'm scared to go to a doctor, and if I don't have someone like you close by, which I don't know yet, 'cause we just moved to Colorado, so but it's like I know that, you know, if there's an emergency, I should go to the hospital. Like that's what they're there for, in my opinion.
Right.
But it's like, what do you do if you don't have a clinic like yours close by and you're afraid to go to the doctor? What do you do?
I mean, it's pretty hard. I've even found parents and even other healthcare professionals that feel like they're alone, especially the healthcare professionals. They'll be like, I'm the only one, and they'll be in DFW. And I'm like, you're in a hotbed. You just don't know it. And I get them tapped in and they're like, oh, there's so many of us here. And I'm like, yeah, you just have to figure it out. And I used to say social media has made that easier, but of course now they're so censored. It's not as easy as
Hmm.
it used to be. And then there used to be lists up that you could find pretty easily of professionals, and those get taken down. And then the professionals don't want to be on the list because the medical boards troll the list to find people to go after. That is a
And
true thing that
so
does
just to
happen.
clarify for me, when you say when they think that they're alone, you mean like people who
There's usually
are not
somebody
trusting
there.
vaccines and the CDC and all like the major like the rules that are passed down? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, like the patients or like the parents of the kids, they think there isn't anyone to help them, right? Like
Mm,
I moved to this new place. There's nowhere, no safe person for me to go to. There
hmm.
usually is one. You might have
Right,
to drive an hour and a half or 3 hours, but there usually is one. It's just hard to find them.
right.
And then even providers will think they're the only one, like the only doctor or the only nurse practitioner who thinks the way that I think, or the way this other, Dr. McCullough thinks, or whatever it is. They think that they don't have anyone, and really they're there. They just have to fight. They have to find them. I'm sure in New
Hmm.
Jersey it's hard. I do a lot of phone consults in from New Jersey, I figured out.
Wow.
Even from Houston, I'm in like very North Texas, and I even get a lot of kids that come in from Houston or Central Texas or Oklahoma or west of Fort Worth, which is over 2 hours from here.
Hmm.
So they are driving pretty far sometimes, but it's better than nothing. And I think the biggest example I can give is in the middle of all the COVID BS, when nobody wanted to do their job or practice medicine. Um, I ended up with a phone consult from Pennsylvania. And mom had lived here before, but she said, nobody will see my baby. It's all Zoom. I'm concerned, but nobody will actually look at him. And so we talked on the phone for a while, and I said, well, pretty handicapped because you're not here. Could you send me some pictures and videos? And then I ended up having to call her and say, I cannot be sure about this. But we need to test this baby for Down syndrome because he looks like he has Down syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
So she couldn't get anyone to see her there. So they literally put their whole family in the car and drove 20 something hours
No
and
way.
came in. And yes, and he was 9 months old and she took his clothes off so I could look at him. And from across the room, I could see his chest. I'm like, this baby has a heart defect, like a big one.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's
And
scary.
yes, it is
And
scary.
it's not that they didn't want to go to the doctor. The doctors just wouldn't even see them because the
No.
doctors were afraid of
Right.
COVID. Is
And
that
they
it?
were they were concerned to go to just anyone as well. But at that point, they're
Uh-huh.
like, did anyone like to do their job? And the answer
Right.
was no, they did not.
That's crazy.
So yeah, so I ended up getting them in with my favorite cardiology group. I'm very picky. Like if you're not
Uh-huh.
nice to my people, if you're not smart at your job, and if you won't call my cell phone to discuss cases with me that are
Hmm.
complicated, a little out there, you're not on my list.
So you have
Um,
your own list, like the white
yes.
list of
Yeah, there is
doctors.
another
Okay.
doctor that introduces me to people as his
I w
Rolodex.
I would
Yeah.
love to get your list so that I know
That's
where to
like for
go.
this area, right? So
Oh
that's
yeah.
what doctor goes, oh yeah, you call Michelle. She's like, okay, this one's really good. This one does a
Hmm.
decent job. Definitely go, do not go here, here, here.
Right. Right.
So, but I got him in that day and they were like, yes, he does need to have surgery, but he was so stable. I went ahead and sent them back home.
Hmm.
And they're like, nope, we don't trust anybody. We're going to stay here where you are. And I said, no, we're not going to crack the chest and then have to
Hmm.
drive 22 hours in a car seat. And then what if we get into an accident? The chest clip is like over the,
Hmm.
but that's the kind of stuff we've been dealing with. Not so bad since they've kind of let up on the COVID ridiculousness,
Hmm.
but we're still dealing with people who don't exactly they had it easy back then, right? Um, they could just half do their job and blame it on Rona and not get in trouble.
Hmm.
And usually when people feel like that's okay, you can't get them back to 100%, they'll get back up to 70, 75%. So we're still dealing with that, but we're dealing with a massive mistrust where people don't want to go to a
Hmm.
provider at all. And if they don't have
Yeah.
someone like me that they feel like they can 100% trust, then they're just not going. And then you have these kiddos that have had major problems going on or something that would have been easy to fix if it was caught pretty early. And now we're way behind the curve and trying to catch up.
And I was
So,
wondering, what do you think is the main cause of that mistrust? Like for me, like there was something major that happened to my kid, but for
mhm.
people that just were they just thinking in the back of their mind that this is a little fishy? Why are so many people, my friends and family, dying of opioids and vaccines, making
Right.
kids turn into zombies? Like, but then when COVID happened and there was this huge information leak, that came out where all this craziness with the CDC and just weird, weird stuff going on, and can just see what's going on eventually, unless people are just still denying all the
Hmm.
stuff. But is that just like it just codified, like, oh, this is actually real? It's not just a something in the back of my mind anymore, and that's why there's mass distrust, even if it didn't happen directly to them.
I think so. I mean, for a long time, most of my clientele, when I would have babies come in for me to see, they had siblings who had been injured already by the system, as I call it.
Like
So like you,
vaccines
like something really big
and
happened.
drugs.
Uh-huh. And they went, this is what is happening. I'm gonna
Mhm.
do, we're not doing it that way again. So I would get the siblings. And so by then they had learned a lot. And it was like a very specific clientele. And then of course you would have the younger ones who just for some reason had the personality to study everything or research everything and go, I don't think I'm going to do it that way. And they would come in. But since all of the COVID stuff, which yes, like you're looking at it going, this doesn't make sense. The doctors are talking about it not making sense. So I do have a very new clientele grouping, which I'm excited about that are very, very young. It's their first baby and they're here going, okay, we don't want to do it like that. We don't want to vaccinate, or I want to try really hard for my child to not get any drugs, right, as
hmm
best that I can. And so we're going to come here. And then it's interesting because they're like 18, 19, 20. And then I'm dealing with something I usually don't deal with the 35 or 38-year-old. It's like, well, we're kids. We don't really have a lot of money, or like we have no idea how to cook. And I'm going, okay, so how about we not, how about Vienna sausages not be the first meat that we give the baby when we're trying
Pop tarts
finger
for
food?
breakfast.
Right. And so, I'm like, okay, so I have to figure out where they are,
uh,
right? And a few of them are like, okay, do we know how to boil water to steam broccoli? And they're like, no. Okay. Do you know how to
right.
like
I
bake a
shouldn't.
chicken?
I
I'm
shouldn't
I'm trying
laugh
I'm
because
trying to ask, but you really don't know, because think about it. I'm 43,
yeah, I'm
right? And so
41.
that would be like
Yeah.
my 24-year-old
hmm
not knowing how to cook. Like he
Yeah.
doesn't make the best
I
choice.
I
But
learned to cook two things growing up to just get by if my parents weren't able to cook or my sisters or somebody. I can boil water and cook pasta because that's like you just turn on the stove and that's all you have to do and wait for it to be
right.
done. And I can cook eggs or pancakes like on the pan, put oil on the pan and
Right.
then put the thing on until it's done and flip it over and then eat it.
But like my 20-year-old is a boy, he can do eggs, he can roast a chicken, he
hmm
can make salads, he can do veggies,
hmm
hamburgers, eggs. Like he knows he ate real food, and my husband's a very good cook, so he did learn stuff. But I think there's a lot of people that in that grouping, that generation, their parents didn't cook, and so they don't know how to cook. So I actually
Because
have
they're
been like,
working
yes.
all the
I'm like,
time.
does
Yeah.
grandma know how to cook? Oh yeah, grandma knows. Okay. Like type, I'm like, these are the things like like how to brown ground meat, how to bake
uh-huh.
chicken, how to saute veggies, how to like bake a sweet potato,
Get a George
how to
Foreman
steam
grill and
veggies. And they come back and they're like, grandma was so excited. We're like, our doctor gave us this list and
uh-huh.
asked for you to help us. So
Uh-huh.
I'm not used to that, but it's super fun because they just
Mhm.
don't, they need to know. And once I explain to them why they need to know, they're like, that makes sense. I'm all in.
Yeah, and then the schools,
Yeah.
I was homeschooled, but I heard that in the schools that when they had budgets cuts, the first thing they take out is like the shop class
Like
and
home
the
ec and
home
cooking.
ec, the click cooking, because nobody needs to know how to take care of a family. That's stupid. That's not a
Right.
job, right?
No,
No, it's not
exactly.
hard. It's easy to raise a bunch of kids and take care of a home, and that stuff's so easy. You don't need to teach them any of those skills,
Oh
you
my
know?
gosh, it's ridiculous. And then I do have a grouping coming in, and they're here now, but in the middle of all that happening, they would come in and they would be like stressed. Like,
Uh,
okay, I have no idea what I'm doing here. I actually have no idea what I'm doing. I'm kind of freaked out. I just know that I can't do that anymore. And so I'm like, it's going to be fine.
And when you say that,
It'll be
you're
fine. I
talking
will teach you all
about
the things.
with the way they live and eat, or are you talking about medical
Their
or both?
medicine,
Both
their
medical,
medicine,
medical
like
stuff.
I
Yeah.
don't want to use any of the medicines anymore unless
hmm
it's like a life or death situation, but I have
Right.
no idea what
Like
to do with them.
penicillin, or you have a
Right.
ruptured
Like,
spleen. Like, yeah, go in and get it sewed back together before you die, or
right.
your
It's
broken
like
arm or something.
I don't
Yeah.
want to give my kid an antibiotic every time there's an ear
Right.
infection. I don't want to use
Right.
over the counter stuff because they have the sniffles, or
Yeah.
whatever it is. Or even if it's strep, like what if I don't want to use antibiotics for strep? I'm like, well, there's that's you're the
And
parent. It's your choice. There's a
there's
protocol for
time.
that.
Yeah, it's when it's life or
Yeah.
death. Like I have a story about my niece. I think she was under 1 years old. She was very small, and she had an infection. I think it was MRSA or something like that in her mouth. So
Yeah.
it was extremely painful. She wouldn't drink anything or
Yeah.
eat anything, like literally, because it hurt too much. And so this went on for like 3 or 4 days. And I'm like, I said to my sister, we got to get her to the hospital because she doesn't eat anything. She's going to die. And so we went there and, we had to like I was holding her down and the nurses were holding there's like four people. She was so strong. And I was like holding an
Hmm.
arm and then there was one person on each leg, one person on each arm. They took some blood samples or whatever, some tests, and they're like, she just needs to eat, and they gave an antibiotic,
Mm-hmm.
because to get rid of the swelling so that she could start
Right.
eating and
Yeah.
stay alive. And they said, well, until she starts eating normal food, just keep giving her popsicles because the cold will numb her mouth
Like,
enough.
here, have some sugar. It'll help your
But
your
but it
infection.
it it was the only thing she would eat because
Yeah.
it was at least something, because the cold would numb her mouth enough that it wouldn't hurt, and so she would just eat popsicles for a couple days and then until the swelling went down.
Yes.
But it's like that's a life or death situation,
Yeah, mouth
you
abscesses are
know.
a big deal. But I
Mm,
that's what I tell parents. I've had a couple of parents who are bringing their second or third baby to me, and their children have ended up just with a serious thing in the hospital. And I'm like, look, I feel your pain. I have a 24-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 5-year-old who have never had an antibiotic. And my 5-month-old has already had one because she would have died.
mhm.
Right? Like, she was fine. I kind of, for a couple of days, I was like, huh. Like, I look across the room and be like, is your color a little off? I go around, I look from the other side. I'm like, yeah, I guess you're okay. And I'm like, oh, you did take a couple of good naps the last couple of days. And then it was like 9:30 p.m. I went, yeah, I think she's actually sick. And then at 10:30, I told my husband, get your mom over here. We have to go to the hospital. The baby's really sick. And
Mm,
he said, he goes, at first, I didn't comprehend what you're saying because you can handle literally anything, and you never take anything into the hospital unless it's like really serious. And then once I comprehended that, and I got up and started running around and like packing things because I knew that we were going to get admitted. Um, he said, then I got scared because I know that you literally would never say that, but it was
mhm,
literally, that's why people don't like to do pediatrics, right? Because they're like, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm dead. Like, they can compensate so well until they just literally hit the ditch. And so we ended up admitted for 3 days, and she was very sick, but an hour and a half before I said, let's go, she was like sitting there in bed looking at me and smiling. It's like, that's
wow.
what it's for. That's what emergency medicine is
Right.
for.
It's for emergencies.
And it's not a fun experience. Um, Even for me, people said, what was that like for you? Was it easier or harder? And I go, well, in one way it's easier because I know what to expect. But on the other side, it's harder because I'm like 13 steps ahead in my brain and I know where everything's going. Whereas another parent may be like, well, we're just going to check. Everything's going to be fine. I'm like, this is not good, you
Mm,
know? So like, we have to get this done. I still made them take one step at a time. Like, we're not just going to come in and do all the things. Like, we're going to let it roll out just to make sure. But I get it. That's what it's there for. But you do need to find someone you can trust just to monitor. I mean, I can't tell you how many fourth babies of parents that I'm like, hey, this baby is not growing well at all. This is really not good. And they're like, what? Because they're just busy. Like,
mm,
like, I'm
yeah.
homeschooling. We got to go to co-op and we got to do this. And I'm doing language, and we're going to like the blah, blah, blah tour for whatever to learn about that. I'm like, I need you to sit down and feed the baby. And they're like, oh, I always make tons of milk. I'm like, well, for the 3 previous times, but you also like probably sat down and you're not sitting down.
Mm.
I need you to stop.
So
Right.
when you have clients that come in, is there a regular schedule like every 6 months, or how does that work? You just as needed?
It's all different. I do
Uh-huh.
have some. So I always say, when it's not your first rodeo, especially when you get to the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh,
Hmm.
eighth kid, like, I have them, a lot of those now are delivering with midwives. So the midwives legally can follow them for up to 6 weeks in the state of Texas. So I take them at like 6 or 8 weeks just to
Hmm.
establish care. And then they usually will come in at 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, and 2 years. And I just tell them, you know how it's a part-time job to change out their clothes as they grow out of them? Like, you're like, I literally just did that, I feel like. And now I'm having to switch the clothes out again. If you lose your part-time job, you should probably call me, right? Otherwise,
Oh
I'll see,
yeah, like they're not
like,
growing the
that's,
right
yeah. Otherwise,
speed.
I'll see you at 6 months, but also don't sit at home
Right.
going, this is my fifth kid. I shouldn't need help, but you're worried about something or there's something going on. So
Yeah,
it's
just talk
not
to somebody.
uncommon.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not uncommon for a mom, like, just last month I had a mom, they can plop on my schedule from online. I keep some of it visible for people to schedule themselves, and I keep a lot of it locked down. Um, but she just scheduled herself on my schedule, and she came in with the eighth kid. I'm like, what's going on? The baby was 9 months old. She said, I just need you to tell me that this kid's normal because she's different than every single other one of my children.
Hmm.
And all of her other kids were very motor skill oriented, like they were walking by 9 months. And this kid
Hmm.
was just sitting there playing and saying mama and dad,
Is
hi
it
and
just a
bye.
personality thing or
Yeah. And
not a
so, but
medical
I'm
thing?
like, thank
Yeah.
you. That's exactly what I'm
Yeah.
talking about. Like, yes, let's at the minimum do every 6 months so that I don't have an 18-month old that comes in that has the motor skills of a 1 year old because you didn't come in for 9 months,
Right.
or let's not do that, but let's do a minimum of every 6 months. But please come in if there's something. I trust your mother's intuition. That's what I'm trying to
It,
teach them all the time.
I have a funny story about my nephew. I think he might have been 1 year old, and they were a little concerned he wasn't walking, and they're like, "What's going on with him?" But
And how old was he?
I think he was one, but
Yeah.
didn't want to walk. He would just sit there, and if he wanted to move over, he would kind of like
Scoot.
scoot, yeah, just kind of wiggle and just wiggle to where he needed to go. But it looked like he was kind of like scheming, like the little baby on the Family Guy cartoon. Like he was really super smart, but he just didn't feel like doing anything because he didn't want to. And they were wondering, is everything okay? And then one time there was like this big bowl of cookies that his dad, my brother, was eating, and he really likes cookies, and so he was like looking at him, and he was across the room. And then me and my brother just talked for a minute, and then we looked over, and like a whole bunch of cookies were missing from the bowl, and he was still back over there, but there's crumbs all over his mouth. Like he just scooted over really quick, grabbed a bunch of cookies, and scooted back. Like he was scheming the
Yeah.
whole time. Like he was
Yeah, but
fooling everybody.
I don't allow butt scooting in my office. It's not
Really?
allowed butt scooting. Yeah, you're
So
required to
how do you
crawl.
get him to do that then? How
So
do you? Yeah.
usually, so in one of my kids, he would do this,
Uh-huh.
like scoot across the floor. And the second I could see he was going for that, I was like, oh God, no, we're not doing that. So I
Uh,
tell people there's two things that make connections in the brain between the right brain and the left brain, that nothing else will ever make the same connection. Okay, so one of them is cross crawling on the hands and knees because you're moving the left hand and right knee at the
mhm.
same time, and the right hand and the left knee. So you're having to move both sides in unison. So one of them is cross crawling on the hands and knees, and the other one is writing in cursive. Takes both
Mm.
sides of the brain, okay,
Which
which they
they
don't
don't
teach.
teach anymore. Yeah.
Right. So like my kids are learning cursive because they're homeschooled slash like very, very, very privately schooled,
Yeah, like you have
3
different
days a
groups that
week.
you go to. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So that's where they are right now. So those are the two things. I'm like, if you're going to public school, then you need to teach them cursive at home, or you need to hire a tutor, or whatever you're going to do. So if they're not doing that, most of the time I'm looking at, are they tight? Because a lot of those kids I have in my office, it looks like a house. So yes, I have a desk and stuff, and I have in the windows behind me, I have like a baby scale and I have a changing table, but the rest of it's like a couch and a play mat and toys and stuff like that. So I'll get them on their hands and knees, and a lot of time they're like, it's like they're piston loaded. Like you get them up on their hands and knees and their legs just shoot out from under them, like they're spring loaded or something.
Hmm.
And I'll go, okay, well, our hips are excessively tight. So we're going to go have body work to get that done and get them more comfortable on their stomach. And if that doesn't work, I have a neuro chiropractor that I refer to. So he is a chiropractor, but I think he has like 2 degrees, 2 master's degrees in the brain. And so
Wow.
he will put them like through all of these testing and different things to see what part of their brain is not clicked on for that to happen. And he'll do movement exercises with them, and they will crawl. So
Hmm.
he did get my son to crawl, and then if the parents listen and go, he gets my random patients that are scooting on their butt, or sometimes they'll do the gorilla swing You know how gorillas will put their fist down and they
Yeah,
swing their
you're
arms
just
out to the
walking on your
side?
arms, basically. Just
Once
yeah,
every 2 or 3 years, I get a gorilla swing come in, and the parents are like, "Isn't that so cute?" I'm like, "No." I mean, yes, your baby is very cute and
right.
that's funny, but that's not, let me explain to you why,
Interesting.
and
Yeah.
sometimes it's actually a visual thing that's kind of knocked out, that they don't, their vision has not developed to be moving in the prone position. And so there's some exercises you can do in front of the mirror that
Mhm.
will turn that on.
Really?
So they feel like they can see and navigate in that position rather than sitting up. So there's different things that you should do, but the first thing I look at is, well, usually you're not comfortable prone because your neck or your shoulders are tight or your hips are tight or whatever it is, and that's what we need to work on first. But it is
Mhm.
a requirement in my office that we crawl on the hands and knees. No butt scooting. And I had a 14-month-old come in that hadn't seen me since I think 2 months, and he was scooting just like my son did. I'm like, that just warms my heart. My son did the same thing. We're not going to keep, we need to move on.
Right.
We have to do the
I
right thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that scripture in the Bible, you love someone, you don't let them do something if you think it's hurting them, you correct it, right? It's not because you don't, like, you're trying to be mean. It's just, hey, I think this would be
Right.
better for you if you do it this way, so I'm gonna try to
I
correct
mean,
it.
I try to support parents that, um, you know, none of my kids are vaccinated. They're not exposed to medications other than when the baby, was almost septic. They don't,
Hmm.
but they have a perfect diet. I'm a stickler about diet. We have a very non-toxic household. We don't even have EMFs. There's like no Wi-Fi where I live. I mean, I control
Hmm.
all of the things that I could possibly control, but I still have to deal with the world out there.
Hmm.
And so my 8-year-old, when she was a year, she was already speaking like a 2-year-old, but she was not crawling and she was not close.
Hmm.
I guess she was crawling finally. She crawled at like 11 months, but she was not pulling to stand and she was very tight. Um, my husband now does body work on babies like literally all day, but 8 years he did not, and it was his own kid, so it's a little different, right?
When you say
But,
body
but
work, I don't know that
like
term.
either chiropractor or massage,
Hmm.
like myofascial release and things like that.
Hmm.
Uh, so at this point, I've been specializing in infants and toddlers for 21 years.
Wow.
So 8 years ago, I had still been specializing in infants and toddlers for a very long time. And people were giving me a hard time that I had her scheduled for an OT eval. You leave her alone. She is so smart. She talks more than any other baby I've ever seen. What is wrong with you? You're so negative. You're so
People
picky.
were telling you that
Giving
you're
me a hard
bad
time,
for
right?
getting your
Like,
kid checked out.
what's wrong with you? And I'm like, hi. So this is what I do for a living. And speech has nothing to do with motor skills.
So
Like
do you
literally
you don't
nothing.
work with speech therapy in your office?
No,
Yeah.
I provide primary care and then I do a lot of I do a lot of alternative care as well. But
Hmm.
I'm not a speech therapist.
Right.
I'm not an occupational therapist. I'm not a physical therapist. That's not what I do. And
Hmm.
so I took her to be evaluated with early childhood intervention, which is like a program in Texas, and they come to the house and do the therapy and all the things. And so when you go in, they have to do all three evals: the speech, the physical therapy, and the occupational therapy. And they were like, "This is actually the oddest combo we have ever seen because she speaks at least the age of a 2-year-old, but her motor skills are like a 7 or 8 month old." I'm
Hmm.
like, "Yep, I know." And so then people are like, oh gosh, I'm sorry. I'm like, but this is what all the moms are up against, right? When I know for a fact, because this is what I do for a living, the moms that aren't trained in the way that I am, they're having their mother's intuition, like something is not right in
Hmm.
that situation. And everyone around them is like, oh, you stop it. You're just being a
Yeah.
worry. You leave him alone. He's just a boy. That's the way
And
boys are.
and it's like I think I kind of think that that's normal human behavior. It's like you have biases, and maybe like you have to pick a side. Are you on the medical side or are you on the natural side? Like, why do you have to pick a side for one? And then,
Yeah.
um, and then just you want to comfort your family. You don't want them to worry. But it's like, if there's something wrong, what's the harm in getting things checked out? It's not like you're gonna could jump into some weird program that, or that might be harmful, but at least get them checked out. Like we had our son, that he was almost 3 years old and he hadn't spoke a single word. And so
Right.
I was like looking at him like, yeah, there's cases like that, like Albert Einstein or whatever, that became the smartest person in the world. And they didn't talk until they were 4. But I'm like, I don't know if that's what's happening here.
Right.
Because what I do is I see him try to talk, and we did get him evaluated by a speech therapist, and they didn't diagnose him with, and the doctor, they didn't diagnose him like with autism or brain damage or anything, which I believe he has. But they just said, oh, he just has a speech delay. But I don't agree with that. And like when he's really smart, his motor skills are off the charts. Like he can seems almost do backflips. He's very coordinated. But he just, when he tries to talk, he'll get very angry and frustrated, and he'll like
Mhm.
slap his face because his brain, like, so he's trying to
It's
send the
like in there,
signals.
he just can't get it out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like he'll send the signals to his brain, and then nothing, it'll be blocked, and he just like he can't form the words. And he wants to say like I love you or I'm hungry or whatever, and he gets really angry. And I think that's what people call autism. I call it brain damage from some kind of treatment that they should not have got when they were an infant, you know. But can I,
Right.
can I show you a video? I have a little video of him playing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to share my screen here. Let me see, let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, I can.
Okay, so well, this is our 1 year old kid. So our 1 year old, he does not like outdoors. He just likes to
No.
like make jokes and like tease people and,
Right.
and watch cartoons and play indoors. But our 3 year old loves outdoors. So they're like total opposites. So this is our 1 year old here.
Are you so excited about the snow? Or you just want to go watch cartoons, huh?
And that's our 3 year old right there. And here, I'll show you another video. This is our 3 year old going down the slide.
Okay, you ready? Nana is waiting for you at the bottom. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Woo! Oh, good job, Kale. Good job, bud. You went fast. You're like a bullet. How was it? Was that fun? Huh?
Mm. No, where did you guys just move from? Very confused.
We moved from Michigan. I'm
Okay.
originally from Michigan. Um, I grew up there, and my wife's from the Philippines. So we were living there for almost 4 years. And then I got a job offer in Colorado, so we moved a couple months ago to Colorado, and then,
Okay. So you moved from cold, like snow to snow then.
well, Colorado, it's really nice weather. It's like
Yeah.
it'll snow, and then 15 minutes later the sun will come out and it will be nice, and then the snow will melt. It's like different than Michigan. Michigan, it'll
Right,
snow
right.
and it'll like be gloomy for the next 3 weeks, and the snow
Right,
won't go
right.
away. But it's different. We're getting used to it, but it's, yeah, really nice weather. The people are really nice, and I think it's because the sun shines most days of the year, and in Michigan it's like you're lucky
Right.
lucky if it's like a quarter of the days you get sunshine. And it's so interesting because I think I've seen some of your interviews where you talk about vitamin D and stuff like that for health. And it's interesting because I was in the military in the National Guard, and I would go to the VA doctor because it was like required once a year. We had to get checked up by a doctor and a dentist, and vaccines and all that stuff every year. You had to do it, or else they'd kick you out, or and penalize you, demote you. Um, but I actually got prescribed vitamin D by a VA doctor, and then I had tested high cholesterol, and
Hmm.
a doctor prescribed me to eat avocados more often. And I was like, this is really interesting. I did not expect that from a
Yeah,
doctor.
that's surprising.
And then
Hmm.
vaccines, I believe destroyed the part of my kid's brain that I'm trying to revive. But um,
Right. I
uh,
mean, I have a friend
yeah.
who I'm 43, so I think he would have been maybe 40 this year, 39, 40. And it's funny because like on Facebook even, my memories, it'll come up and he'll comment on some of my stuff, like on board with me. And it's like, I don't know what happened. Like COVID came and he was holding shot clinics at his business in Maui and like all on board. And I'm going, what are you doing? He just bought into, they had experts and they spent so much money on how can we get buy-in from these people, and I guess he just fell for it, but he died 2 weeks after his COVID booster.
No way.
So
It
yeah,
was
so
he was a doctor?
no,
Oh,
he was a finance
oh,
person and
okay.
he was involved with a brewery in Maui. And I actually am friends with his mom. His mom is a holistic
Okay.
veterinarian. So,
So he
but we
just
went to,
he just he was going on the health side, but then he just kind of bought into the whole
he really
COVID
was
thing,
like,
and then he died right after his
and
booster shot.
what was sad for me was, I mean, he got really big and overweight at one point, and
Mm.
this was when Jason was a baby. So 5 years ago, probably, because Jason's 5.5, he was like, I need to turn my life around, right? So I was doing phone consults with him to help him with that. And he did lose like over 100 pounds and he was much healthier and he was doing great. And so I thought, I don't want people to think, oh, well, remember when he was really unhealthy, that's probably why. But I was able to see all the documents because of his mother, and he started having chest pain pretty immediately after the booster and even went into the ER, and they said, oh, you probably just pulled a muscle, and kind of sent him away. And
Oh
then
my word.
yeah, so he said to his wife, like, my chest is bothering me again. I think I'm going to go sleep on the couch in my office
Oh
downstairs.
no.
And she found him like the next
Oh
morning.
my gosh.
And then I read his autopsy report. It's like literally like his heart just exploded. Like,
Oh my
and
word.
it was like died of natural causes. I'm like, oh my gosh, what?
Yeah, it's
No.
so natural to have your heart explode inside your chest.
Right. So just think like this ER doctor didn't even do a workup on him, because if he was already having chest pain and that's what his heart, when I read everything that was going on in and around his heart, and he had been to the ER like the week before, however many days before, like he would have had abnormal studies, but they didn't do
Can you
them.
imagine though, like what are okay, we talk about incentives. You have incentives, you get gold stars if you follow the program, give drugs. It's even called a program, performance recognition program. Get with the program. You get a gold star.
Mhm.
You get, 200 gold stars by the end of the year.
Oh,
You
and
get
it's not even
$10,000
all,
bonus. It's like,
yeah, but in
what?
that situation, it's not even all that. It's just if the culture of the moment is that we're doing this and it's safe and effective and everything's fine, then, and that's what everyone believes, and you're immersed in an entire campus and the boards is saying, yes, that's what we, this is the way you should be
Well,
practicing.
don't they
And
get
then the
incentives
hospital,
too? Like each company that gets a certain amount of vaccinations for
but it's
flu
not
or
even just
COVID,
incentives.
they get
But that's what I'm
incentives
trying to
too.
tell you. It's not just incentives.
It's like
It's
it all works together to bring
it's just
about a
it's just
culture.
the culture. And
But
that's all it's
it's
all it is,
contributing though. The incentives
for sure.
bring about
But it's
behaviors,
shaped.
and then
Yes.
it brings about this whole like, oh, everybody around me says this is what we're doing. Get with the program, and
Yeah, and
um,
so if you don't do it, you're like the weirdo,
yeah.
right?
Can you imagine what would
Or
happen if a doctor that this your friend died and they did a full investigation and they found, oh yeah, it was definitely the COVID shot that made him die. They're not gonna do that. They're that's where their paycheck comes from. The
Mhm.
politicians, the drug companies that make vaccines and drugs, and it's like all this, it's all trickled down, and I think they're infiltrated into the CDC, WHO. It's all like they're talking about trillions of dollars being
And in
passed around.
they've infiltrated medical school too. So they give all of this money to the medical schools, and they take over their
So what do you think
education.
they're going to teach? For so doctors, they sit there in the classroom for, well, not in the classroom the whole time, but majority of the time just sit in the classroom getting taught for what, about 12 years on average. That's not just like after regular school, after they graduate high school,
Right.
then they do another 12 years to become a doctor. What do you think the way they're going to be thinking by the time they're done being taught one way to do things for 12 years? And then
Mhm.
the funding for that education comes from these people who are making trillions of dollars off of drugs and vaccines and stuff that are destroying people's lives right and left. And it's like, is there are we just blind? Like we don't see what's happening? I mean, it's happening to our friends, our neighbors, our kids, ourselves. And this is I think there's going to be a turning point. I don't know if it's happened already, or if it's like in the near future, in a couple of years, where there's going to be more people that completely are disgusted with the medical system than there are
Oh,
that
there's
trust
more
it.
and more. There's more and more. And I've had the displeasure of being admitted to the hospital myself recently, and my daughter being admitted. And of course, I don't have a problem because like I am like one of the first private patient advocates ever. But I did find when I was admitted for like 24 hours or less that everybody was very nice and very accommodating and not arguing with me and supportive of my choices. And I mean, it was like night and day. I was like, oh, you people realize that like the public is coming for you. They've had it, right?
Right.
And then when I got into, the children's hospital system, it is different when you're dealing with minors, right? And for the most part, the medical staff was great. We had an amateur hour going on in the ER staff. But later my husband was like, I just don't know like why you have to be like that, because I was not nice. And I'm like, I'm literally, I understand when they come in and say X, Y, Z, they're looking out 12 steps. They're trying to get us over here. And we're, in this area
I
that we're never going to do.
I
And you don't
can imagine you
realize
as a
that. I
patient,
know what they're doing. Yeah, no.
because
So I,
you have a master's degree in nursing, is that right?
yeah, so I'm a nurse practitioner. And then like now people talk about patient advocates.
uh,
They have them in the hospital that they employ, but I have been a private patient advocate for 8 years. I was doing that before
uh,
anybody even knew what it was. And then I just happened to be on the Dr. Artist show because he's here in town, and it came up and it went viral, right? So then during COVID, I had a patient advocacy team for COVID patients. And if they called us and hired an advocate, like pretty much on admission, we had 100% survival rate of COVID,
mhm.
right? Because we were inserting ourselves into this system where we're just going to follow this protocol that's dumb and then everybody dies. And then we now have Graith Care that Priscilla owns, and they work all over the country. And she happens to live in the area, and we're friends. And so I just said, you can take that. I don't want to do adults. Just
Yeah, you
swing me.
focus
The
on
infants,
kids. Yeah.
yeah, is the
Infants.
especially the newborns in the area, because everybody knows who I am. They just hear my name and they back off. I honestly don't usually have to get involved anymore. But the doctor came in because I had a moment with the vascular access team doing a really shitty job, to be honest, and kicked them out of my room. And the doctor, who was from California, she was cute. She was like a Barbie. She came in and she was like, I'm so sorry that happened, blah, 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 blah. And she was like, I can't believe we don't have patient advocates on the weekend. And I looked at her and I thought, my husband was like, oh, shit. Okay, I looked at her and I said, A, it's Friday. It's not the weekend. B, I am a private patient advocate that people hire for hundreds of dollars an hour and have for 8 years before anyone knew what a private patient advocate is. And I will mop the floor with literally anyone in this hospital and already have multiple times. And the only reason you want to get a patient advocate is because you want your labs to make sure this baby, who now looks amazing, has a perfect looking chart. Okay, so this baby, and of course I rattle off all the medical stuff. I'm like, I understand her labs looked horrible, and that's why we are here and doing what we're doing. And it would be nice if we could go, look, they're better before we get discharged. But your team sucks, and nobody is poking my baby again. And this baby looks great because of X, Y, A, B, C, D, E. And so you actually don't need a patient advocate, because the answer is still no. And it's probably not very nice to make that person deal with me anyways. And she was like, okay, valid. I mean, I think you're right. We do have all of these indices saying that she's better. And obviously you're a very, whatever mother, and you'll come back. I was just like, but when she said that, my husband was like, oh God, but they just, it is better. Like, there is a lot of like, is there anything else we can do for you? Like, I'm so sorry. Like, here comes the manager. I mean, it is a lot better, especially
it's like
adult world, because they've just been lambasted for years. Like, everybody comes in with like a bazooka ready to go after them. And so they're like, oh.
And it's kind of like Comcast, like after Netflix comes out and they know they're probably going to die, but they've been treating people so bad for decades.
Yes.
Because they were the only provider of entertainment, and
exactly.
And now they're like, "Oh no, we'll be so nice to you and everything," but they're still gonna die. Probably.
Of course, it's your choice. Of course, it's your choice. And so with the kids, they still can get a little bullying because it is a different situation. And I hate that, because sometimes I do get called and I'm like, yeah, so that actually is dangerous. And you do need to let them do that. They believe me, right? Because they trust me. They don't believe them about anything. So there are times I get called to get involved. I'm like, okay, so let's talk about why that's not safe. No, you cannot leave AMA.
So do you talk to the doctors and the nurses at the hospital, or just to the patients?
Usually I just talk to the patient or the parents, and then I will talk to them on speakerphone. So I did have several weekends ago, a baby in the NICU where the neonatologist got her brain wrapped around what she wanted to do and dug her heels in. I'm like, this is so stupid.
Yeah, I was wondering.
Saturday, I just called in there on speaker, and then once the doctor had to deal with me, suddenly she thought, I don't think we need to do that. I'm like,
Can I hire you to be our patient advocate? Because if I can't find someone like you that has a clinic close by, because we're kind of out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, so I mean, I do provide services all over the nation. And I do take cases, but there are times like this last case I literally stepped out of like a baptism luncheon into the nursery with the baby and was like on speaker and handled it. And then mom was just texting me like kind of follow-up questions and stuff, and they were fine. So I still have her as a case. But if it's like an inpatient and I'm involved and I can tell it's going to go on into the week and I'm booked with patients, then I will kick them over to Graith Care.
So they're full all they do is patient advocacy.
That's all they do.
Okay. Can
100%.
can
And
I
she's
look
got
that
like,
up right now?
yeah,
Because
so
I
yep.
want to see what you're talking about.
Yeah, and actually if you give my name,
You said it's called
you
Graith
leave that as a
Care.
referral, you get a discount. GRAITH, Graith
Care.
Care. So graithcare.com. Yeah, there you
Okay.
go. So
So if I call them, that's basically all they do is patient advocacy.
yeah,
Right.
like scroll down. I think Priscilla's picture. Right. So Priscilla Romans is the owner.
19 years experience, 29
Yes.
years experience, 25 years experience.
Right. So they have nurses from all different
Wow.
areas of the hospital. They have even like OTs
Make,
and PTs.
make healthcare great again, it says.
Yeah. She's like, that's her thing, is healthcare sucks, get an advocate.
Yeah, everybody knows that.
So yeah, so
Wow.
if your need, that's what they do all day. And in fact,
Uh-huh.
Priscilla the other day contacted me about a case they took with a mom going in for an induction, and asked me a few questions, and she knows I'm always willing to just help on the side.
Mm-hmm.
This is what they do. Baby Jace here at the top, I took his case on the weekend and did some good work with him, and I could tell that it just was going to keep going on into the week. And so I texted Priscilla and said, hey, I'm going to need you guys to take this case because I'm booked all week, and when Monday hits, we're really going to need to just nail down
Right.
the hospitalist and the different service providers. And then I actually took him as to see him follow up when he came out of the hospital to make sure that we kept everything really tight knit, because they were threatening CPS and all sorts of stuff.
Oh my word.
So Jace was one of my kiddos that I took on and then moved over to them, just because they were going to need that level of care. And I can't interrupt a day full of patients to then be on the phone when their doctors are walking in.
Oh my goodness. Like, I can't imagine the stress talking about CPS when you're trying to get your kid better.
I love to kick CPS's butt. It's one of my favorite things. But if you go to get an advocate, I think it says on there, it'll say like, did you have a referral or whatever? And if you put, I think I'm in there as Michelle Routon and Michelle James. Either one, they will give you a discount.
Is that your maiden name?
Well, my husband's last name is James.
Oh, okay. So but you're semi-famous, so you kept.
It's not my legal name.
You kept your name. Yeah. Right. I totally get it.
So yes, that's, okay. At this point, if things aren't going just as you would hope, then getting an advocate is smart.
Mm-hmm.
When my husband said, did you have to be like that? I go, do you think that they usually wake up the anesthesiologist at 3 a.m. to bring in her excessively expensive sonogram machine to start an IV on an infant after they missed twice? Do you think that's a thing? Whoa. And he was like, oh, do they not do that? I go, oh, no, I wake up in the morning and they poked the baby 20 times and she actually is now unresponsive because she's traumatized. Whoa. That's what I wake up and deal with. And that is not, when I saw Amateur Hour, we were done. Right. And he's like, oh.
It reminds me of when I was in the National Guard, we did combat lifesaver training for 1 week. And every day, it was so stressful, but every day they say, look at the person sitting next to you. That's the person that's going to stick you with a needle today, and then you're going to stick them. So every day we had to do that. The
problem is I'm an incredibly good stick.
Mm-hmm.
Like a very good
But
stick.
You're not allowed to do it when you're in the hospital.
And I almost said, like, I'll just do it myself. Like, I actually said to someone, do you want me to do it? And John's like, I think she was really freaked out. I go, well, she should have been, because, like, what is that? What is?
And I kind of feel bad, for these techs and maybe nurses. Nurses usually are really well trained, but a lot of times it's just a tech, and they're probably not getting paid very much. They just throw them in there. And
the techs aren't sticking babies.
It's the nurses. It's the nurses. But, so even the nurses don't get enough training. Like, what's the problem?
These hospitals, when you're in night shift, it's like they want to send all the newbies to night shift. And I remember,
because nobody wants it, right?
I remember, 20, 18 years ago in NICU going like, what are we doing? I mean, I'm still on night shift and I'm like the transport nurse or the charge nurse. I mean,
Mhm.
somebody is asking me a question every 30 seconds for 12 hours straight. Like my brain is going to explode. Why do we have every new person,
Because the
like
people that
every
have
new grad?
seniority, they want to work during the day. They want
So
a
they
nice
did start
schedule.
splitting,
Yeah.
they started splitting them up, right? They would send half to day shift
Yeah.
and half to
I
night shift
mean,
and they go, hey, yes, you're
yeah,
going to day shift, but you're probably going to have to go back to night shift.
right. I mean,
And
it
then,
because I was in the military. It's like you can't put all the new trainees on one mission. That's a disaster waiting to happen. You have
no,
to put experienced people with inexperienced people so they can
but
train
medicine
them
misses
on the
that.
job.
It's like,
Yeah.
their baptism by fire, eat the young nurses, like you got the old bitchy hens clucking around, not being nice. And I've been here this many years, it's like the culture is so gross, honestly. But they put all the newbies on at night. And I'm hoping that as time goes on, there are more units like the one I was in almost all those years ago, where we said, hey, this is bad.
Hmm.
And they started splitting them up and moving them around. It made a huge difference. It made a huge
It's
difference.
tough
But
when there was such a shortage. I mean, I was a volunteer with the National Guard to go work in the hospitals during the COVID lockdowns because there's such a shortage, and I worked for 4 months and would go to all these different hospitals wherever they needed us, and I learned a lot during that time, and it's tough, man. It's stressful. It's hard work. But it's like I just think it's with these incentive things. I just think okay, um you go to school for 12 years, like let's say that this picture is probably not a doctor. These are probably models, but they like on this page they have this person like really nice clean, just the
mhm.
face out in the lobby, which you never see, just like oh yeah, we're a great hospital, and then you see this guy walking down the stairs in the background with a suit. That's probably the lawyer. They just got done doing some big litigation
Right.
lawsuit, class action lawsuit against the hospital. But I wanted to look through this because I was thinking, okay, do incentives really matter? Like that doctor has said, oh no, it's all about health.
So
You
what you
know,
look at, I don't know if you saw the CMS system. There was something.
what's the CMS?
It's the CMS system is like the Medicare Medicaid system.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
And so this is how
Mm,
the CMS system is how the government controls the
because
hospitals.
they have the funding, like, yeah. Oh my, it's
Yes.
crazy.
So if you're
Ah,
not meeting, their benchmarks and their standards and all of those things, and they
oh.
will dock your reimbursement.
That's
So,
crazy. Like, and
right.
then the
So
government is influenced by the people paying for their election campaigns, which are who? The drug
exactly.
companies. It's like it's all
Exactly.
one big flow of
Yes.
corrupt scum, and it's flowing
So
down to
when,
these babies and people that are coming in trying to get help, and it's all this system set up.
yes. So
Ugh.
when the COVID vaccine came out, okay, and so we'll just say the nursing staff, but the medical staff went, I don't think I want this. It's an experimental drug.
Right.
They've never done mRNA before. There's no studies, and the hospitals are like, you will get vaccinated, right? So the staff that had never thought about it before, even with the flu shot every year, okay, we're like, I don't understand, like, how are they doing this? This can't be possible, or how is the system all set up? And I'm like, well, or the ones that were begrudgingly doing the flu shot just because they didn't want to wear a mask. Well, now they're wearing a mask anyways. And I told them that's what would happen. Um, they didn't understand how that happened. I'm like, look, so it was probably around 2005-ish. Okay. I was in a meeting, a unit council meeting for the NICU I was working in, and they had different nurses were in charge of different things. Okay. And so this nurse came back and her job was to go to the system-wide meeting and then bring back to our meeting or the hospital-wide meeting, bring back whatever they were working on. I remember her saying Joint Commission, right, which is just this made up thing that they don't actually have to do, but they want to be Joint Commission certified, that Joint Commission comes in and runs around and says, oh yes, it's safe here or whatever. Okay. Joint Commission says that they want to make sure that all of the staff have equal opportunity to get a flu shot. And I went, this is not good. And they're like, you're nuts. Okay.
Equal
2005.
opportunity.
And I
But
said,
it's
this is
their
not good. So they're like,
choice.
we just need everyone to either get the flu shot or sign this form. We need 100% of the staff to do that. That's one of the things they're looking at. Okay. So in a NICU with as many beds as we had, there were probably a couple of hundred nurses. Myself, and I could only find one other nurse who not only refused to get the shot, but also refused to sign the form. Okay, the other ones either got the shot or they signed the form. But I'm like, I'm not signing this because this says that I realize that I'm putting my patients in danger, including risk of death, which is absolutely not
Which
true.
can be used against you later.
Right. So it's like, but I was telling people then around this time, I mean, like 2000,
Whoa.
it was somewhere between like 2005, 2006, somewhere in
Uh-huh.
there, because I had just bought my house, I remember, and gone back to full time. And
Yeah, you're a
I'm like,
big
oh, this is not
advocate for
good.
freedom
This
of
is
choice with
right.
vaccines
I'm
and
like, this
anything
is not good.
with your
This is the
body.
first step to the end, right?
Uh-huh.
So eventually it came up that the CMS system, okay, the Medicare Medicaid system said, if you don't have 90% of your staff vaccinated for the flu shot, we will dock your Medicare Medicaid reimbursement by 2%,
What
which
the
is
crap? Like, stop
a
paying
lot,
insurance for the people who
like
need care
just by 2%
because
is
you're
maybe
not
like,
jabbing people with what we
yes,
want you
if
to
you
jab.
don't hit the 90%. Okay, so I'm like, the system was already there. They already set the system. They already got it in there. They already made it work. They already tested it out. So now they come out with the COVID experimental use authorization vaccines. Okay. The system's there. They just went, oh, we have all the paperwork for that. So here's this. And then if you want a religious or a medical exemption, this is how it's going. Here's the paperwork they already used for the flu shot. Except for this time, the CMS system said, if you don't meet your benchmark, you will get that deduction. But if you do what we ask for an entire fiscal year, we'll pay you more.
Oh, you get a big gold star and a little
Yes.
pile of
So it
cash.
was like, not just, we are going to deduct you, but if you do what we ask, you're going to get more money.
If you
I mean,
don't jab people, 90% of people, or is it 90%? So if you don't jab 90% of people, we're going to slap you on the wrist. If you do jab 90%, we'll give you a cookie.
Exactly. So your 10% are getting by without it by either a religious exemption or a medical exemption. And where this is significant, is because during COVID, a lot of the staff woke up and went, whoa, this is scary. I don't want to do this, right? And it's my body and all the things. I'm like, welcome to what I've been trying to
Because
tell
no
you
longer
since
is it the flu vaccination, which is kind of like nobody even knows if it does much, and it's been going on for many, many years. But this is an experimental thing that they're doing the same incentive program from the government, or you get doxed, 2% of
like, don't
your
be shocked.
funding.
Don't be shocked.
It's like you ever seen those little scientific experiment where they have like the rat or some animal, like if they press the button on accident, like, oh, the sugar pill comes out of the wall, that comes out of the little chute. They eat the sugar pill, like, then they figure it out. Oh, if I hit this button, the sugar pill comes out, and then they keep eating. They just keep hitting the button over and over until they eat so much sugar that they die. It's either like a pigeon or a rat or something. It's like, or a rabbit. I don't know. They're like, oh, look how smart that thing is. Like, well, of course.
Right.
They're
Well,
going to do
and
it.
the problem that we have is that when you have people who are like nursing students or respiratory therapy students or medical students, right? They're a guest in that house, like in the hospital or the hospital system. They're a guest. They don't want to use up 10% of their exemptions on the guests. They're trying to keep their good staff, but stay within the
Whoa,
guidelines
that's
for the money.
crazy. That's
Okay.
crazy.
So years ago, I was already providing advocacy and like I would do clergy coaching and clergy signature and stuff for nursing students that wanted to be in nursing school, but they wanted an exemption from the shots, and I would get them through. But since COVID, they're like, Michelle, do you think if my daughter wants to go to nursing school, can you help get us through? I'm like, find another profession.
Well, what will they do? Will they kick them out of school?
Mhm.
Oh my
Yeah. They
goodness.
just don't get to finish. So then,
Oh,
I always
that's their
said with,
life. That's their
yes,
entire career being
right.
thrown
And
out the
it's hard.
door.
It's like, yep, go back to the drawing board. I'm like, I don't
Holy
know. Do you want to be a
crap.
chiropractor or a midwife or a naturopath? Like, can you pick something else?
If they
But
don't get the vaccinations and drugs or whatever, like the
yeah.
program,
And
get with the program.
I think now, you know, I've gotten a couple through, but there's a lot that haven't gotten through. Like now it's just not worth the risk. And I was like, why do you want to go work there? I mean, it's not getting better, it's getting worse. Like they're literally, the buildings are full of Stepford wives at this point. I know quite a few that are working in the hospital that are on our side, but they've worked there for, you know, I've worked at this hospital for 15 years and they're a damn good nurse, and they don't want them to go anywhere.
So
They're
they're
going to
gonna
be
say,
fine.
okay, we'll let them through in on the 10%
They're going to get their
exemption.
exemption.
But if you're not in
Yeah.
that 10% of top nurses, top staff, you're probably gonna they're gonna find a reason to kick you out the door.
Right. So I already
Holy
said with
crap.
the flu shot thing, I'm like, look, and this was years ago when they implemented this. I'm like, when you walk into that building, you are now walking into a building and being cared for 100% of people who were not allowed their own medical autonomy and decision making. Right?
That's
They
crazy
don't
to
have their
think
own
about.
autonomy. It is. They don't have their own
Whoa.
autonomy. They've been bullied and fallen for it.
Mhm.
And so why do you think you're going to walk in and get it for yourself? Because they're not getting
And
it.
you know,
Even
I
whether
have
they
to
realize that consciously or not.
I have to ask you this question because I did not put two and two together on this, but I just thought about this right now. They had this huge medical shortage. That's why they sent in the National Guard to the hospitals because they were so understaffed. Is that
Yeah.
partially because they were trying to force the staff to get the experimental
Yes.
COVID vaccination, or else then that's why they didn't want to work there anymore? Is that a
Yep.
big reason for the shortage?
Yes.
Holy
Mhm.
crud! I mean, I guess probably I should have clued in way like years ago that that's what the major reason was, but I was just like, oh, you know, maybe they're scared of COVID or something. But I didn't think it was mostly. It was like it was all these shenanigans with
No, there's
the
like, I'm not doing this
vaccine.
anymore. Yeah, I'm not doing it anymore. So
Oh
you have
man.
that, like you already had that with the flu shot, and then
Uh-huh.
they upped the ante with COVID to the point that now you can't get the students through. So as time goes on, if they are able to keep
Whoa.
the stronghold, you're not going to have any fresh people coming in that actually
I'm
have thought about
it's
this or think for themselves or have stood up for themselves. There will be none eventually.
But even like having people, period, because like the military, I think they have a 25 or 30% shortage on their recruitment goals. Like they have to replenish a certain amount of soldiers just to protect, you know, to have protection for the country. And I think they're 25 to 30% behind on
Yeah.
recruiting because people just like, I don't want to go be jabbed, and I don't, whatever reason, you know, like they're just the government's stupid, crazy. They saw what happened with Afghanistan, where we just kind of like left people there and weapons for the enemy to take and shoot people with, and it's like, this is what you want me to volunteer the next 4 to 20 years of my life devoted to
For that.
this group of people that behave this way, and this president, you know, I mean, the president changes every 4 years or 8 years, but you know, I was in the National Guard for 20 to 21 years, and the day that I went in and they said, "Hey, just by the way, I went to the base to do my perform my duties, part-time duties. And they're like, just so President Biden signed a executive order today that the bathroom and the showers that are being used are no longer based on your gender. They're based on the gender that you say you are, that you think you are, for all military, all government, and all military. And I said, okay, that's it. I'm done.
Yeah, you're
I
like,
was gonna
and
be in for life. Like I was a lifer, I was like, yeah, I'll do my part-time duties. I'll get my health insurance paid for, and like I was giving up my part of my life for something that I thought I was doing a good thing, and I still think this country is pretty good on the margins, compared to all the other countries if you line them up, but it's rapidly deteriorating compared, like the
it
government is
is.
just
I mean,
crazy out of control. The drug
but how many
companies.
people, they just move on, and even though it's against their morals, they know it's ethically not okay. They just are like, well,
I could probably
oh
I can
well,
tell
and
you
they
how
just
many
move.
people, because out of like the 400 people that were there that day, I think I was the only one who quit because of it. But I've heard every base that has usually like one person that says, on my conscience and my
Just
faith,
one.
1 out of 400 is about the rate of people that quit the military. And maybe they say, oh, I've got 18 more months on my contract or 6 more months on my contract, so I'm just going to ride it out so I can keep my benefits for college or whatever. And so they say I can't deal with this in my faith, but I'll just close my eyes and cover up with a towel and get through the next 6 months, and then I just won't re-enlist when it comes up like I was going to. I bet there's probably 20% or
Right.
17% of people that say that in their minds, like, I'm not going to ruin my college fund because of the shower
Yeah. I mean,
situation.
I
But
get it. Like that's where they get
yeah,
people by the pocketbook,
and yeah, but they're not going to re-enlist, so they might be
Um,
fine now, but in
can
6 months,
pause?
now and then 6 months later, guess what? There's a huge shortage.
I don't have, he's 24, right? So he doesn't need 24-hour surveillance, as they call it. The other three do. And then my twin brother and I have 4 parents, and neither of our step parents have their own kids. So we have 4 parents.
Mm-hmm.
And I have my dad and my stepmom at assisted living like 7 minutes from here, and she's trying not to go to her doctor's appointment. So
Well,
I'm like, I will
can
be
you
there in a
blame her?
minute. Keep going. Well, but she's in a situation where if she doesn't minimally do what they ask, she's just going to die. So
Yeah.
it's like this is one of those situations where I'm like, and God love her, we went to the cardiologist Tuesday, and they came in and said, the nurse said, have you had your flu shot? And I said, no, she has not, and she is not going to have one. And she's like, I don't do that. So she's at least vocal to me in that way. She's like, hell no. But then like her whole life, she's never really taken meds. She's 79. She just had her first surgery this summer, but I'm like, I'm so sorry. You have this and this and this. And like, you have to take your Lasix or your legs are going to fill with fluid and then weep everywhere. And then you're going to be admitted again for 5 days. Like,
my mom was like this. She never would you have to beg her to go to the hospital for any checkup. And she was always about like, okay, take cod liver oil every day, take your vitamins,
no,
eat
she's not doing
healthy.
that
And
though. Like
she's
she
not
eats like
doing
crap.
what she's
No,
supposed to
she's
either.
not doing
She
like
doesn't want to do
anything.
anything.
No, and I'm like, hey, like I pay $250 a month, or you pay $250 a month for the button around your neck. Push it when you want to get up in your your room or whatever, because we have them there together so that you don't fall. She won't push the button, and she's fallen multiple times.
She just calls you. She won't push the button, right?
No, she just tries to get up. And so last week she fell and busted her head open and went to the ER. And I'm just like, no, you're like, do you know? So it's like I have 6 kids and only one of them doesn't need 24 hours of surveillance. And the concierge called and said, well, I was just going to see, she says she's not feeling well if this was necessary. I'm like, get her ass in the transport car and take her.
Yeah, it's
I cannot spend my life like redoing all of these appointments because she decides she doesn't feel like it.
Can you imagine though, like you're you're at a place in your life where it's like if I press that button, I'm admitting that I'm not
Right.
independent,
I'm
and
like,
so it's like
you can't.
they don't want to. I get it though. I get it. They don't
I'm
want to
like, no,
admit it.
dude. Like, I actually in the middle of the night, I'm like, oh, I need to call this doctor for dad, and I need to do that for dad, and I've done all of these for Judy, but I still need to get her to the hepatologist. I mean, this is what I'm dealing with, and so it's like people are like, I'm surprised you have them in assisted living. I'm like, well, they live in East Texas. This was their choice.
Uh-huh.
Like, they cannot go home. It's not safe right now.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I'm surprised you go to all these doctors. I'm like, well, it
Now,
means
when
she's
you
gonna die without her
what do they
meds.
mean
So,
they're surprised you have them in assisted living? Like, are you supposed to
oh,
give
just
up your
because they
everything and just go and like take care of
right.
them
Because the nursing
24/7?
homes and the assisted living places,
Uh-huh.
like they wouldn't let visitors in. And so I was battling that for
You're talking
people
about
as well.
COVID.
Like for COVID, yeah. And I'm
Yeah.
like, look,
But what are the
I
options though? What
right. But it's like my brother and I sat down and said,
Yeah.
okay, right now it's not safe for you to go back home after being
Mhm.
like to try to get stronger for months.
Mhm.
Like you can't go back to East Texas where there's not really anything there and then they ship you further east instead of to Dallas. And then
Mhm.
I'm here with like this baby and my brother's like trying to run a bank, all this stuff. And then we have to go
Mhm.
all the way out there and then I have to get you airlifted back
Right.
into town. You know what I
Right.
mean? And I'm like, it's not safe. So you have this choice or this choice or this choice.
Right.
And that's what they chose. And that's the
Right.
choice.
You can't be going there and like yeah, and it's interesting.
Right. But I'm like,
Yeah.
people are so judgy. And I'm like, but I get that I have my beliefs
Uh-huh.
and I would do it the way I want to do it. But it is my job as a medical power of attorney to present, to go, these are the options that
Right.
you have within the realm of safe. What would
You
you like to
you
do? It's
can't
their
force your parents to do a
it's
certain
not-
choice. It is their choice. It's interesting. I
so
like how I mean you're obviously one of the biggest advocates for freedom of choice of medical treatment, and but you work with you understand that you can't do everything yourself. Like people, there are times when people need care, and that's what these places are for. But it's when they like overstep they just kind of like trying to squeeze more money out of people. Like it's just so gross, the
It's
abuse.
being me, being me, it's easier because when I took her to cardiology Tuesday, the doctor was very nice. And
Hmm.
I've been around this cardiologist years ago and he was an ass. So I'm like, oh, somebody smacked you down. Like, I mean, he was so nice. And I just said, look, like the priority that we have here is nephrology and hepatology.
Hmm.
Okay. And this is a lot. Like technically she could go to hematology and ophthalmology and podiatry. And like there's all these things that are going on, but these are and he's like, I agree. Those are the best. And he goes, do you want to just put her follow up with me on a PRN like as needed basis? And then if you feel like she needs to be seen again, just call the front desk and ask to speak to my nurse and let her know and she'll get you in quicker. And I'm like, perfect.
You
Thank
know
you.
what?
But if it was somebody else, they'd be like, well, see you again in 8
You know
weeks
what
and
you
just
remind me
extract
of?
money out of
It
it.
reminds me exactly like the conversation of me talking to my auto mechanic. They're like, "Well, you really do need to change your back tires and your brakes, but you also could change your struts and this and this and this. So it's either going to be $250, what you really need, but I suggest you pay $4,000 and get all this other stuff done." I'm like, "Nah, let's just do the
But
250."
yes, I really think that if it wasn't me sitting there like advocating and like obviously very astute and
Mhm.
going through all the things, I'm like, look, like I own a business, I have to see my own clients, I live on a farm, I have 4 kids, one of them is like a young
Mhm.
infant, like, and I'm dealing with this.
Mhm.
Right. So like we need to prioritize. And he's like, yeah, let's just go PRN and you let us know if you need something
Mhm.
because I'm like, you're not going to change the meds because of the liver and the kidneys. Like they're going to have to do it. So if they get confused and they think cardiology, I will let you know.
You know,
Right. Or they
this is
can just,
so great. I'm so glad that you mentioned the patient advocate because I might have heard that like just walking through the house one day and I heard it on the news or but I didn't realize like now that I'm really digging into this, that's probably
now
one of
there's
the
a
best
company that does it.
things because you can like I know I might not have probably don't have a clinic like yours really close by within driving distance. And maybe there is, I'll look. But if I have to go to the hospital and get checked out, I don't want to just like I don't know all these medical terms, so I have to like take
Right.
what they say,
Yeah.
go research it for 8 days to learn if I'm doing the right decision, or I have this advocate that I call, like, hey, the doctor said this. Here's the photos. Like, what do you think I should? What's your recommendation? I think that's
Or
amazing.
just insert yourself. But yeah, 7 or 8 years
Yeah.
ago, they're like, I'm sorry, who are you? What is that? And back then I would go and like sit down in
Uh-huh.
front of them.
Now it's more normal.
I didn't even know
Yeah.
this was a thing. And I'm like, well, it is now.
So
Like I was the first
yeah,
Rogue One. I'm sure there were other people out there that
right.
just didn't end up going viral and stuff. But the staff is like,
But COVID made
have
things
you
just
heard of this?
explode, and so like everybody's like, "What do we do? Like this is crazy." And so like some things are just normal, like Zoom meetings are just normal now because COVID accelerated that process. Like things
Right.
that would have probably happened over 20 years happened in 2 years
Right. Yeah.
with
All right.
technology
Well,
and medical. Yeah. Okay, you got to
I've
go.
got to run off and
Okay. I really
I'm trying to
appreciate.
keep the chaos down. Like, no, you
Yeah.
may not reschedule this. Like,
Right.
don't be an
Right. I
a-hole.
mean, we
Like, if
have to take
people
care
went
of
out of their way to work
ourselves.
you in.
Yeah. And take care of our families and do what you have to do, but make sure before you make a decision, especially if you're getting shot or putting something in your body or your family's body, that you talk to somebody, you research it. Don't just like sit there and because the system is not right.
And I think too, realize that, you know, I have a baby in New Jersey that I've done multiple phone consults on, and
Hmm.
I have a toddler who obviously is autistic in Arkansas that I've done many phone consults on just to go, like, give me all the information. Let me pick your brain and
Hmm.
ask all the questions. Like, okay, this is what I would do, and if it were my kid, and in this order, so that you're not wasting time and money.
Right.
Like, there are resources there, even if you can't sit down in front of them,
Hmm.
right? Like there are people out there to help
Yeah,
you.
and like I like the one that you mentioned, and there's probably more. If there's anything, if there's any information that you can send me, just and anything that would help on, future podcasts or just in general, like any of this stuff, because you're a wealth of knowledge. So I really, really appreciate your time, and I think people are going to get a lot out of this. So thank you so much,
Good.
Michelle.
Perfect. You're welcome.
Okay,
Sorry I have to run.
that's fine.
Life.
Is it okay if I show people your website for your clinic or
Mhm.
okay? I'll show that when you leave. Okay. Thank you so much and
All right.
go
Thank you.
go keep up the good fight.
All
We'll
right.
see
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Okay. So I'm just gonna go over a couple things. So Michelle Routen, she had to go take care of people because that's what she does. Um, and I wanted to show this is the website for her clinic. She does many, many things. She's like a founder of companies, nonprofits, all kinds of things. And um, yeah, she worked in the NICU for many, many years, and she just said there's something wrong here. So she's really fighting to advocate for freedom of medical choice. Um, and this is the website for her clinic. Um, it's called Wonderfully Made Wellness Sanctuary, and the website is wmwsanctuary.com. Thanks everybody for listening. I hope you got a lot out of this, and until next time, keep seeking the truth.